Well, I'm sure we all remember that TV theme song, the theme to the Abbott Costello TV show. Here on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop, our guest today is Lou Costello's daughter, Chris Costello, who oversees Abbott Costello Collectibles.com. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. She's joined us today to share some memories of her father. And thank you so much for doing this, Chris. And, you know, we just had elections in New Jersey not too long ago. And I think if your father were alive today and he was running for any office, no matter what it was, he would have won it. Because next to Frank Sinatra, I think Lou Costello is one of the most beloved figures to ever come out of New Jersey.
Oh, that is so sweet. Well, he certainly loved his home state and his hometown. And he certainly never forgot, you know, his origins and, you know, the people from back in Patterson, boyhood friends, et cetera. Unlike maybe some that come out to Hollywood, you know, in today's day, and,
right.
You know, they find success and sometimes leave behind, you know, who they were at one point, you know, back in their hometown. Even in, like, naughty 90s, the backdrop was Patterson Wolves, you know, Sebastian Dimwitty, his character name, Sebastian, was his dad's name. So he always liked to incorporate that, which I think says a lot about him for his character, you know, as a man.
Yeah, and I remember my family, because on my mother's side of the family, big Italian family, and they would always have stories about seeing him in Patterson. Even after Abbott and Costello made it, he would come back.
It's true. You know, he always came back. In fact, I believe he had some kind of an agreement with Universal that the film would first be previewed in Patterson at the Fabian Theater.
Okay.
And I know Jack and the Beanstalk was, and I think there were other films as well. So that was very important for him. In fact, even growing up, he brought the whole family out here, but he never lost that Italian, New Jersey, let's go to Grandma's for a coffee clutch. You know, he was very good. You know, he would always go and see his mother, you know, or his sister, bringing the jelly donuts. You know, very, very East Coast.
I beg your pardon, gentlemen. Frank Sinatra is here. Frank, we want to welcome you to our program.
Well, thanks, boys.
You and Frank should get along fine. You're both from New Jersey.
I'm from Patterson, New Jersey. Say, Frank, how far is that from Hasbrook Heights? To you, it would be about a 20-minute ride in a patrol wagon.
You know, for a thin guy, he's getting some pretty fat jokes.
With your shape, I wouldn't talk, kid.
Well, I may be a little bulgy. But remember, even an army travels on its stomach.
If you get any bigger, an army will be able to camp on yours.
Abbott, New Jersey, or no New Jersey, this guy is basketball. Now, Costello, cut it out. Cut it out.
Judging by your age, because I did a little research on you, I'm thinking that you probably don't have very many memories of your father working on the movies, because you came along at the tail end, I suppose.
I have a lot of memories of my dad, you know, at home, and those are the important memories.
Sure.
I remember being on a couple of the film sets. It's not where... How do I put this? It's not where my memory takes me when I think of my dad. I'm not thinking of him as Lou Costello, the comedian. I'm thinking of him as Lou Costello, my dad.
Right.
So sometimes I think, you know, the fans, like I've had fans ask me, did your dad ever talk to you about his burlesque years? And you're thinking, my God,
Right.
You know, I'm 6 years old, he's driving me to school. That would be the last thing on my mind. You know, there wasn't a lot of career talk at the house. When he came home, he became, you know, just a family man, which is what I love him for. But, you know, sure, I do remember being on the sets, you know, on a few of his films, and it was all intriguing and stuff, but to me, he was just going to work and doing a job. He had, I think the most fascinating thing for me was the pancake makeup that they used to wear, because it made his skin turn like a different color for the camera.
Right.
It was like an orangey color, that pancake makeup. And then he would go home and he would get in the pool with a bar of soap and a washcloth and wash it off.
You know, I'll read things on the internet, or people will say things to me. They'll say, did you know that Abbott and Costello actually hated each other? And I think to myself, now I've seen the outtakes from some of their movies where they're just goofing around on the set, and they seem to be having the time of their lives, no pun intended. And, you know, they don't look like bitter enemies.
You know, when people say that to me, did they get along, I kind of chuckle because you got to look at it from a very humanistic point of view. These were two guys who were totally different personalities off camera. They had their ups, they had their downs. Did they have fights? Of course they did. But who, being in a team or even in families doesn't have a fight? I mean, it would be ludicrous to say that Bud and Lou, never had an argument. And of course they did. But you know what? They were like brothers to each other. They treated each other like brothers. Families are still very close to this day. It was always Uncle Bud, Aunt Betty. It was Uncle Lou, Aunt Ann. The family, I think, would just kind of chuckle and roll their eyes, if they got into an argument about something. But they patched it up. They worked it out. And they truly had such a love for each other. I know one thing, and my sister told me this, that God help anybody who ever put Bud Abbott down in front of my father. My father was the first one to go to bat.
Right.
And the same thing with Bud towards my dad. So if anybody's thinking, did they never have a fight? Well, I would like to say look at your family, look at your friends, and look at people that have been together 25 years and tell me they have never had a disagreement.
Right.
Of course, that's healthy.
Well, I read somewhere that they had a disagreement about, I think your father had a maid, and then he fired her, and Bud had a maid. And when I read that, I said, this sounds like a plot from one of their TV shows.
They were both very competitive with each other, both of them. If Bud Abbott had a pool that was put in and it was a couple of feet longer, Dad would go back and make sure his was 3 feet longer. They just had this competitive, kid-like competition with each other. But at the end of the day, they would laugh about it, too.
Wilbur, you shouldn't give him peppermint candy to eat. It's bad for his teeth.
He likes peppermint candy.
Now, she's right. You've spoiled the horse's appetite. Now he won't eat his fodder.
Eat his fodder?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Finnegan is, a cannibal?
No, she's going to hang his fodder on his nose.
Ain't he gonna look funny with his fodder on his nose?
He eats his fodder every day.
Finnegan eats his fodder every day?
Sure.
What's his fodder eat?
He eats his fodder.
Oh. And what's his mother eat?
Well, she eats her fodder.
Mm-hmm. It's getting worse all the time.
Oh, what's the use of talking to you?
Must be Father's Day.
Dad was just more out front. His personality was more gregarious. Bud Abbott, God bless the man, he was not the character that you saw on screen.
Right.
This was the most gentle human being that God ever put on the face of the planet. And I sometimes feel very bad for Bud, who always seems to get pushed into the shadows, because I always like to say, without Bud Abbott, you didn't have Lou Costello, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And Bud was the sweetest human being. Bud Jr., who passed away, and I think it was 96 or 98, was just like his dad. One of the sweetest human beings, never said a bad word about anybody. And I think one of the most enjoyable memories for me of Bud Abbott was when I was 16, I'd got my learner's permit. And at that age, with a learner's permit, you just want to go out and drive. And I remember calling him up, and I wanted to go and visit him. And I went out to his home, which was maybe a half hour from where I was living in the valley. And I had one of the most enjoyable afternoons with this man. He was adorable. And as we were wrapping up our visit, I was sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden on TV came the Abbott and Costello television show.
Right.
And just to look at this man's expression, watching this was priceless, but just one of the dearest human beings.
Chris also oversees Abbott and Costello Collectibles.com, which keeps the names Abbott and Costello out there, and there are so many great projects that have come up in recent memory. In fact, very recently, Bear Manor Books put out the Buck Private's film script book.
It did, and in fact, what's funny is the gentleman who now owns the publishing house, Ben Omart, was actually a fan, one of the original fans of the Abbott and Costello fan club. And I remember corresponding with him when he was just a teenager. And Ron Palumbo, who authored the book, is the president of the fan club. He co-authored Abbott and Costello in Hollywood. The man is a walking encyclopedia and of Abbott and Costello. But when he alerted me about the book, I immediately got in touch with Ben Omart. and we arranged to bring the book onto the Abbott and Costello collectible sites for the fans. One of the advantages of purchasing off our website, if they want anything autographed, we autograph it before it goes out.
Right.
If we get with the Abbotts, which we try and do once, every month or so, we get the Abbotts to sign it as well. But the book is beautiful. It's got new twists, new turns, photographs, the entire film script. So for the Abbott and Costello fan, especially somebody that loves the earlier films like Buck Privates, is going to get a big thrill out of it. And but the collectible site has been in operation for over 10 years, and we also started putting out a monthly e-newsletter, which you're now a subscriber.
I am indeed.
And we give something a little bit more for the fans. As far as new product releases, sometimes we put on giant sales. We're trying to give them a little bit more of the behind the scenes of Bud and Lou, and also let the fans have a chance to share their stories, their works, with other fans. And right now we're in 5 countries, which is great.
Wow. And that web address is AbbottandCostelloCollectibles.com.
Correct.
And I just want to mention this to people. Abbott is spelled Abbott. The amount of
Correct.
people who don't know how to spell that is unbelievable.
Well, also when they put in the web address, is what's important. It's Abbott and AND.
That's right.
CostelloCollectibles.com. And we also were on Facebook. We've got a lot going on, a lot of new stuff coming out. We're starting to work now with all of you, one of our big licensees, on, we've got all the T-shirts now in where they're going to drop ship for us. So if anybody is looking for an Abbott and Costello, Christmas gift for family members, for themselves, we just encourage, do the ordering before the 15th of December. But it's a fun website. We have a lot of fun. The fans are great. They become like family. We've got a lot of new things coming out, and we always post it in the newsletter. So anybody who's a subscriber to the newsletter is going to get the information before it's released, to the general public.
Right. I do want to mention quickly that Who's on First children's book.
Yes. It was published by an author out of Canada, and the book is absolutely adorable. It's got wonderful caricatures of Abbott and Costello, but it's also to introduce kids to baseball, as well as Abbott and Costello. And they use the text of the routine as a storyline. So it's adults love this book. Adults are buying it for adults. It doesn't have to be just for a child. But it's a beautiful book, and if they want to look at it, they can certainly go into the book section of our website and bring it up.
One of the things I wanted to share with you before we let you go here, when I was maybe about 10 or 11 years old, for our church group, we did as kids an Abbott and Costello routine. Mm-hmm. And I had the radio show at the time on cassette. By the way, the radio show is now available on CD, which you can also get on the website. And I would write down the sketches, as listening to the radio show. We did Hurts You Drive and all those. And I said to the guy who was I played your father, by the way. And I said to the guy who was playing Bud, I said, go ahead and slap me, because that's the way it is in the movies and on TV. So I don't know. I have no memory of how well it went down or if we were funny. My lasting memory is that the right side of my face was blown up like a balloon and beat red.
Oh, no. Well, Bud Jr. used to say, and he would demonstrate it, how his father showed him how he would slap Dad,
right?
Which was he would slightly cup his hand. So he was not really giving him a full open hand slap on the face. But I know that when my grandmother would watch him get slapped around, you could hear her go, oh, Lou, my boy, oh, my boy, and it would just kill her. But he just had a way of doing the slap so that, Dad was not really feeling anything.
Right.
But Bud Abbott, going back to Bud for just a second, I mean, Bud Abbott, God bless him, this man was one of the greatest straight men in the history of show business. And, when I talk to fans or I do lectures and this and that, I'm always trying to bring out the fact that, you can't ignore Bud. If more people knew him, as sort of this soft, gentle-natured man away from being sort of the con-like, figure, that he played, slapping the underdog, around,
right.
That he truly was so magnificent with the timing. I mean, my dad would ad-lib constantly.
Right.
And Bud Abbott could bring this man back right to the point of departure in whatever they were doing. And, I mean, one time in Las Vegas, my sister recalls, I think it was at the Sands Hotel or Sahara, and they started doing Who's On First, and Dad would just take off in another direction. And Bud, well, Patty said the family knew what was happening, the audience didn't. But you could see the beads of perspiration on Bud's brow, you know, and he was just like, I don't know how to get him back into this routine. And they kept going and going and going, and people were laughing hysterically. But it was the longest recorded version of the routine.
Wow.
It was like it ran 12 minutes. But Bud was a master. He was a master.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm a catcher, too.
So they tell me.
I get behind the plate, do some fancy catching. Tomorrow's pitching on my team, and a heavy hitter gets up.
Yes.
Now, the heavy hitter bunts the ball. When he bunts the ball, me being a good catcher, I'm going to throw the guy out of first base, so I pick up the ball and throw it to who?
Now, that's the first thing you've said right.
I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's all you have to do.
Is to throw the ball at first base.
Yes.
Now, who's got it?
Naturally.
Look, if I throw the ball at first base, somebody's got to get it. Now, who has it?
Naturally.
Who?
Naturally.
Naturally?
Naturally.
So I pick up the ball and I throw it to Naturally.
No, you don't. You throw the ball in a hole.
Naturally.
That's different.
That's what I say.
You're not saying
I
that.
throw the ball to Naturally.
You throw it to who?
Naturally.
That's it.
Same as you!
Don't change them around.
Same as you!
Now get it over.
I throw the ball to who? Whoever it is drops the ball and the guy runs a second.
Yes.
Who picks up the ball and throws it to what? What throws it to? I don't know. I don't know. Throws it back to tomorrow. Triple play.
Yes.
Another guy gets up and it's a long fly ball to because. Why? I don't know. He's on third and I don't give a darn.
What?
I said I don't give a darn.
Oh, that's our shortstop.
I'm an
I have one last question for you. I know you didn't have your dad for a long time, but do you remember, because obviously Christmases were important, the best gift he ever gave you?
Himself.
Oh.
Himself. You know, he was a very giving man, very, very generous. I can remember stories of, oh gosh, I wanted a typewriter, and he went out Christmas Eve, and he was looking for a typewriter. And in the toy store, there was a woman who was with two small children. The little girl was crying, and she kept pointing to this doll up on a shelf, and the mother kept saying, not this year because Santa can't afford it. And my dad was watching this, and God bless him, just to show you where his generosity and his heart was. He went up to the clerk, and he pointed to it, and he said, you wrap that up, and you say it's from Santa Claus.
Wow.
So, you know, he was just a very giving man. But I would say, as far as any personal gifts, wow, you know, they were all amazingly wonderful, but the best gift was him as my dad.
Chris, I want to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Well, it was a pleasure. Would love to do it again. You're wonderful. I love your questions.
Oh, thank you so much. I do. I want to encourage everybody to go over to Abbott and Costello Collectibles.com and also sign up for that e-newsletter because Chris isn't kidding here. I saw some pictures I've never seen before. It's nice to get them in your email, you know?
Oh, you're so
nice surprise.
sweet. Anytime you want to do an interview, just let me know.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.